Ukraine's surprise incursion into the Kursk region has caught many off balance. What has been the Russian propaganda response? Is it in as much disarray as their military response so far? Same old, blame the West. Join me, Jan Darasz, for How We Got Here.
On August 6, 2024, Ukrainian forces launched a surprising and unprecedented military operation to the Kursk region of Russia. The attack caught the Kremlin off guard, leading to a chaotic and ineffective initial response from both military and civilian leadership. The Russian authorities struggled to organize an orderly evacuation of the population and to provide a consistent narrative through state propaganda.
Foreign military with NATO equipment have entered our land. Within hours, our city was turned to ruins. Our husbands and neighbors are defending the Donbas region. We've lost our land. We've escaped under fire. We ran for ruins. We would like to ask you for your help. Dear Vladimir Vladimirovich, we are alone.
The focus of the propaganda effort was primarily to highlight Ukrainian losses and blame the West, particularly the US and the UK, for coordinating the Ukrainian action.
По подтвержденным данным, в данный момент в Курской области в атаку на Российскую Федерацию идут не военнослужащие ВСУ Украины, ну вы понимаете, да, а переодетые натовские военнослужащие. И никаких украинских военнослужащих ни в какой стране Европы не обучали.
Some residents of the border region affected by the Ukrainian operation have expressed dismay and irritation at the authorities' ineffectiveness, a very inconvenient development for Russian propaganda.
They were saving only themselves. Those scumbags from the administration lie. They pin medals on their chest. They are alive only because they were saving themselves alone. The television lies. They publish only lies.
This incursion represents a significant political and image challenge for the Kremlin, comparable to the revolt led by the Yevgeny Prigozhin in June 2023. It exposed significant deficits in the effectiveness of Russian central and regional authorities and dealt a blow to the image of the war as being conducted exclusively on Ukrainian territory. The Ukrainian action brought the war to Russian soul on an unprecedented scale, increasing its socio-political costs. Despite the immediate impact, however, there is no indication that these events will lead to a major change in Moscow's policy or its strategic objectives regarding Ukraine and the West. The Ukrainian incursion is expected to lead to a further tightening of the information blockade in Russia and an intensification of repression against those suspected of disloyalty.
Our guest today is Witold Rodkiewicz from the Center for Eastern Studies here in Warsaw. Welcome once more to the program.
Thank you for your invitation. It's always a pleasure.
So, what's your reaction to this latest Ukrainian incursion into Russia? We talked about this briefly. Is it a large-scale raid? Other sources have said it's an invasion, the first since 1941. Where do you place this?
It's a push. It's a raid. It's a very smart way to have an impact on the Russian home front, I think. If you talk to military specialists, they would say that from the strictly military point of view, it's not really significant. It's kind of it's not important. It's minor. It's just a detail.
Because there's no strategic objective.
Right. But if you look at it as I do, from the point of view of Russian internal politics and the functioning of the Russian, I hesitate to call it a state, the kind of mafia, military, racketeer, international operation machine. It seems to be very effective. This is because the Russian system is very bad in dealing with things that are unexpected. They were clearly surprised. They were surprised because they never imagined that Ukrainians, who are seen as entities without any agency, the puppets of the West, would dare and would manage to raid and organize an operation which is more than just a small raid, because that happened before. There were incursions that were minimal or just artillery fire, rocket fire across the border. This is much more, this is much more substantial. We don't know, there is a fog of war, but apparently there are battalion units there on the Russian side of the border, and there are further units sort of backing them on the other side of the border. I've heard or read assessments saying that about 3 brigades are involved. That's probably 5,000–6,000 people. So it's a substantial force, and the effect on the Russian side are amazing, because the Russian state clearly didn't know how to deal with this. It's already been lasting for a week, and looking at today's papers and listening to Russian propaganda information channels, it's rather clear that they still haven't managed to get a handle on it, in the sense that the Ukrainian units are still there. They are still probing, so that they cannot. They haven't moved to the stage of the operation which they promised, on the second day after this happened. That is the ejection, the ejection of the units that are on the Russian side and reaching the Russian border. That was the objective. And they still cannot do it.
Is this a feature of many top-down organizations, that they want to shape realities in accordance with their own fantasies?
I think this is the result of a certain lack of strategic imagination or certain strategic prejudice. As I said, they simply did not think this would be possible. Ukraine was supposed to be the object of an attack, but not an active player that can launch an offensive action not on the Ukrainian territory, but on the Russian territory. And it's a bit surprising, especially after quite aggressive and assertive action that the Ukrainians have been demonstrating for more than a year now in the Black Sea, where they managed to basically lock the Russian Navy within their bases. Yes. But that's clearly, that's a fact that the Russians simply, and so they are I would say in a state of shock. And then there was they didn't know how to, and it's a huge blow to the prestige. This system claimed and built its legitimacy on its military prowess. This was supposed to be the second biggest, the second best army in the world. They are dealing with this, with a minor power. They boast of their technical equipment, tanks, missiles. They are nuclear power. They are superpower on par with the U.S. and China, and they can't, prevent a bunch of Ukrainians of taking over two districts and doing what they want, and being completely unable to do anything about this. This is the blow to the prestige is really huge, and the helplessness. So
how do you expect the propaganda machine? Russia has a great disinformation. How is that going to spin this, do you think?
This is interesting, because at the beginning they were clearly at a loss. There was no clearly no directives, so there were completely contradictory interpretations. Some were saying this is Ukrainians are doing this in spite of what the West tells them, so it's going to produce tensions between Ukraine and the West. And the others were saying no, this is all done by Washington. The Washington is using against Ukrainians to fight against us. It's part of our war against the West. There is a complete lack of facts as far what's really going on, and there were events taking place into some districts of Kursk province, but what kind of events, what was the line of the front, which towns or towns or townlets were occupied. This was completely without any hard facts.
Why is this?
And then there was an emphasis from the very beginning on Ukrainian losses. That the line was and is still that, in fact, this is a gesture of a sign of desperation. Ukrainians know that they are on the brink of defeat, so they are doing this just to, this is a PR stunt. And in fact, this even worsens their situation because they are taking huge losses, and we already stopped them. But then from some elements of description, because they try to hide the situation, but it's kind of very difficult.
It seems to be all out in the open.
And then they're saying, yeah, we stopped them, we have full control, but then at the same time they are talking or writing about the groups that are trying to penetrate what? Further into the Russian interior, which means they are still in the process of trying to stem the advance and not in the process of recovering of the territory. There were these reports about army units being drawn from somewhere else, from different parts of the front or from the interior, but apparently, there is no. They still haven't managed to put an end to this. And what this is also depicted in a way like a natural disaster. So we have reports on the suffering of the population. So the emphasis on the suffering of the population, the major point is that the Ukrainians are targeting. This is the major propaganda point. This was done at a point in the territory when there was no military units, there was no military value. This was a terrorist raid. So this is a terrorist operation. Now it's an informally terrorist operation because they announced that they have a special, in their legal system, they have a special state of siege which is called a terrorist operation. So if the anti-terrorist operation is carried out in certain territory, this is a legal status. So paradoxically, it's not a state of war or even special military operation, it's an anti-terrorist operation. Which means the FSB, so internal security, is in charge, which I think is also counterproductive because this has to be dealt with conventional military means, not by spooks and not by torturers and guys like that, but by tanks, artillery.
Insofar as the social reaction matters in Russia, how do you think that's being shown in the social media?
Yes, this is another big blow, because part of the strategy, political and propaganda strategy, was to keep the war away from the Russian civilian population, from the home. So there was not even an idea of a home front. There was supposed to be, here we live peaceful and so on, and the war is somewhere there in Ukraine, and this has been shuttered. I mean, now war is in Russia, and they get even on TV scenes with people who are crying and complaining that they had to flee, they had to leave their houses, and they're subject to artillery, and at the same time there is huge disappointment and criticism not on public TV, but some of it, even sort of elements of it, about how the authorities were incompetent and left the population to its own devices. They were not able to organize proper evacuation, supplies, and so on and so on. So people just left spontaneously. And what is also interesting, if you compare this with how the reaction, how the Ukrainian society reacted to the Russian invasion, is that there is not a sign, and if they had been such signs of this, the propaganda would have, blown them up and emphasized them. No attempt by the population to offer any resistance. There is no, some kind of national mobilization, territorial units, whatever. This is just they are just complaining that the authorities left them to their own devices, and they are fleeing, and that's it.
Has the language to channel complaint against the various authorities, has that been freed in terms of the way that people can express their dissatisfaction, or do they still have to use a special language of metaphor, allusion? We appeal to Putin as a good czar, and the boyars.
The rituals are there. I mean, this is the kind of when population in Russia protests and wants to express its dissatisfaction with the way that the authorities treat them, they resort to this ritual of appealing to the good Tsar Putin to take the matters in his own hands because the local officials are incompetent. And yes, this is very much so. But the other side of this is that when things when things collapse, and when the situation is really critical like it is there, then there is the expectations that Putin so it hurts his image because he was not able to do anything.
Yeah.
So Putin is exposed as an effective ruler. So in that sense, it erodes his legitimacy. In that sense, this operation, even if this operation military ends in a defeat, I mean, it's, remembering the proportions, but it reminds me a bit about Tet Offensive in Vietnam, which was, from the military point of view, was complete catastrophe for Viet Minh.
But the propaganda victory,
the political effect of it was that the U.S. decided to. So analogy here was not going to be the perfect, but it really makes it more difficult politically and psychologically, and from the point of view atmosphere, to carry on with this war. So it's another cost that the regime has to bear.
If I can just pose the last question to carry on from this previous point about Putin seems to have so many red lines that he's just retreating. He's got to stand somewhere, or is this just an ad infinitum sort of process that he can keep on?
Well, one of the red lines clearly was the violation, as the Russian ambassador to Washington said, the sacred borders of Russia. Yeah? So it's a violation of a certain.
Yes.
And
if you remember,
if you remember, the official Biden administration policy was that. At first, that the American weapons shouldn't be used to attack targets in the territory, on the old territory, pre-2014 territory of the Russian Federation. Then it was, fortunately, it was sort of loosened and made more liberal. But very sensibly, in this case, which clearly, it looks, if you look at it strictly, it's not in line with these restrictions, but thankfully the administration claims and says that this is still within the lines that of its red lines. Yes. That because there were attacks from this area on Ukraine, so the Ukrainians are within their right to. So Anyway, but what is interesting is that there seems to be no escalation of threats on the Russian side in reaction to this. There is a clear connection between their saying the Americans are guilty, the American weapons are being used to kill Russian civilians on the Russian side of the border, but strangely enough, there is no threats of retaliation. There are no escalatory rhetoric. There is no nuclear factor hasn't been waved around, which is interesting.
Yes, he's always not.
I think their hands are so full with dealing with this that they don't really have time to think about the broader strategy and to think about to broader picture. They're just trying to contain this and liquidate because it's so embarrassing and it's such a blow to their prestige and the facade of benevolent authorities that can take care of its population.
Yes. Well, the Ukrainian spanner is definitely in the Russian works at the moment, but thank you very much, Witold Rodkiewicz, for coming on to the programme, as usual. Great to have you. So, that's all we have time for today. Do join us next time for How We Got Here.